Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're listening to the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any selection using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Introduction to Ecocriticism in Discourse Analysis. Ecocriticism within Discourse Analysis offers a critical framework that examines how language, literature, and culture interact with the natural environment. By focusing on the representation of nature and ecological themes in various forms of communication, this approach highlights the profound impact that discourse has on shaping our understanding of environmental issues. With its roots in the environmental movements of the 1970s and 1980s, ecocriticism has evolved to analyze how discourse influences our perceptions of nature, the framing of environmental challenges, and the narratives surrounding sustainability and environmental justice. 1. Defining ecocriticism. Ecocriticism is a critical framework that examines the interplay between literature, culture, and the natural environment, emphasizing environmental issues and nature representation. It's part of the larger field of environmental humanities and addresses the ways in which nature and ecological themes are represented and influenced in literary texts. 1. Key concepts in ecocriticism. Anthropocentrism versus ecocentrism. Analyzing texts for human-centered, anthropocentric, perspectives versus nature-centered, ecocentric, worldviews. Nature and culture. Investigating how literature portrays the dichotomy or connection between nature and culture. Environmental justice. Exploring themes of environmental justice, particularly how marginalized communities are impacted by environmental issues. Pastoralism. Examining romanticized or idealized views of nature in contrast to the realities of environmental degradation. Apocalyptic visions. The portrayal of ecological disaster and dystopian futures in literature. Place and space. Understanding the significance of geographical locations in texts and their relationship to the environment. 2. Application in discourse analysis. Ecocriticism in discourse analysis involves exploring how language, rhetoric, and narrative structures in literature and other forms of media reflect and shape our understanding of the environment. This involves analyzing texts for environmental themes, identifying how ecological concepts and nature are represented in different genres and media. Rhetorical strategies. Investigating how writers use language to evoke particular responses regarding environmental issues. Intertextuality. Understanding how different texts draw on ecological themes and influence each other. By examining literature and culture through an ecocritical lens, discourse analysis reveals underlying attitudes and ideologies about nature and helps us understand how our relationships with the environment are constructed and conveyed through language. 2. Ecocriticism in discourse analysis. Ecocriticism in discourse analysis focuses on how language and communication shape and reflect our understanding of environmental issues and ideologies. It emphasizes the power of discourse in forming societal perceptions of nature and environmental challenges. By scrutinizing language use in various texts, ecocriticism aims to reveal the cultural attitudes, ideologies, and power structures that influence how we interact with the natural world. 1. Key aspects of ecocriticism in discourse analysis. Framing environmental issues. Analyzing how different discourses frame environmental issues, which influences how people perceive problems like climate change, deforestation, and pollution. Ideological underpinnings. Examining the ideological roots behind environmental discourses, such as economic development versus sustainability. Representation of nature. Studying how nature and environmental concerns are portrayed in media, literature, politics, and daily conversations. Narratives and metaphors. Investigating the metaphors and narratives used to describe ecological issues, which can shape public opinion and policy. Environmental justice discourse. Highlighting the language used around environmental justice issues, focusing on how marginalized communities are affected by environmental degradation. Rhetorical strategies. Identifying persuasive techniques used in environmental discourse to sway public opinion or policy. 2. Applying ecocriticism in discourse analysis. Textual analysis. closely reading texts, e.g., news articles, political speeches, advertisements, to identify how they construct and communicate environmental issues. Interdiscursive analysis. Understanding how different types of discourse, scientific, political, cultural, intersect to shape public perception of the environment. Critical evaluation. Assessing the potential impact of environmental discourse on public attitudes and behavior. Ecocriticism in discourse analysis helps us critically understand the narratives and language that shape our relationships with the environment. It reveals how language can perpetuate or challenge dominant ideologies and plays a crucial role in framing our environmental challenges and potential solutions. 3. Historical context. Ecocriticism emerged in the 1970s and 1980s, influenced by the growing environmental movement and works like Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. Initially, it focused on literature, seeking to understand how nature and environmental concerns were depicted in texts. The field gained prominence in the 1990s with seminal works like Lawrence Buell's The Environmental Imagination, which explored environmental themes in American literature. Ecocriticism began addressing various genres and themes, emphasizing the ethical responsibility of literature in addressing environmental issues. 1. Adoption of ecocriticism in discourse analysis. Why? Growing environmental awareness. As environmental issues gained global attention, scholars recognized the importance of analyzing how language and discourse shape public perception and policy regarding these issues. Interdisciplinary approach. Ecocriticism's inherently interdisciplinary nature made it compatible with discourse analysis, offering nuanced insights into how language influences environmental understanding. Power of language. The power of discourse to influence attitudes and actions towards the environment motivated the adoption of ecocriticism in discourse analysis. How? Framework development. Scholars developed frameworks to analyze environmental discourse, drawing from linguistic, rhetorical, and literary theory. Cross-disciplinary integration. The adoption involved integrating ecocritical perspectives into existing discourse analysis methods, allowing for comprehensive studies of environmental communication. Case studies and comparative analyses. Ecocriticism was applied to various case studies and texts, revealing how language constructs and conveys environmental issues. 2. Goal. Understanding language influence. To comprehend how discourse shapes and is shaped by perceptions of the environment, including ideologies, attitudes, and beliefs. Critique of environmental rhetoric. To critically assess the rhetoric used in environmental discourse, identifying biases, misinformation, and manipulation. Promoting sustainable discourse. To encourage discourse that supports environmental sustainability and justice by revealing and challenging harmful narratives. 3. Implication for discourse analysis. New analytical dimensions. Ecocriticism brings fresh perspectives to discourse analysis, emphasizing the need to consider ecological implications in the study of language. Broadening the scope of analysis. It broadens the scope of discourse analysis to include ethical and ideological concerns related to the environment. Informed policy and advocacy. Insights from ecocriticism can guide more informed environmental policy and advocacy by revealing how language influences public perception and action. Incorporating ecocriticism into discourse analysis enables a more nuanced understanding of how environmental narratives shape and reflect our interactions with the natural world. Conclusion. Ecocriticism brings an essential perspective to discourse analysis by revealing the intricate relationship between language, culture, and the natural environment. Through analyzing texts, media, and political discourse, ecocriticism uncovers the ideological underpinnings and rhetorical strategies that shape our understanding of environmental issues. As the field has evolved, it has provided critical insights into how narratives influence public perception, policy, and action towards environmental sustainability. By integrating ecocritical frameworks into discourse analysis, researchers can better understand the ethical, ideological, and practical implications of how we talk about the environment, ultimately guiding more sustainable and equitable environmental practices. Frequently asked questions. What is ecocriticism? Ecocriticism is a critical framework that examines the interaction between literature, culture, and the natural environment. It emphasizes environmental issues and the representation of nature in literary texts, focusing on how these aspects influence and reflect cultural attitudes towards nature. What are the key concepts in ecocriticism? Key concepts in ecocriticism include anthropocentrism versus ecocentrism, the relationship between nature and culture, environmental justice, pastoralism, apocalyptic visions, and the significance of place and space in texts. How does ecocriticism apply to discourse analysis? Ecocriticism in discourse analysis explores how language, rhetoric, and narrative structures in literature and media reflect and shape our understanding of the environment. It analyzes environmental themes, rhetorical strategies, and intertextuality to reveal underlying attitudes and ideologies about nature. What are the key aspects of ecocriticism in discourse analysis? Key aspects include framing environmental issues, examining ideological underpinnings, studying representations of nature, investigating narratives and metaphors, analyzing environmental justice discourse, and identifying rhetorical strategies used in environmental discourse. How did ecocriticism emerge as a field? Ecocriticism emerged in the 1970s and 1980s, influenced by the environmental movement and works like Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. It focused on understanding how nature and environmental concerns were depicted in literature. The field gained prominence in the 1990s, emphasizing the ethical responsibility of literature in addressing environmental issues. Why did scholars adopt ecocriticism in discourse analysis? Scholars adopted ecocriticism due to growing environmental awareness, the inherently interdisciplinary nature of ecocriticism, and the recognition of the power of language to influence attitudes and actions towards the environment. How has ecocriticism been integrated into discourse analysis? Ecocriticism has been integrated into discourse analysis by developing frameworks to analyze environmental discourse, integrating ecocritical perspectives into existing methods, and applying it to case studies to understand how language constructs environmental issues. What are the main goals of ecocriticism in discourse analysis? The main goals are to understand how language shapes perceptions of the environment, critique the rhetoric used in environmental discourse, and promote sustainable discourse by challenging harmful environmental narratives. How does ecocriticism broaden the scope of discourse analysis? Ecocriticism introduces new analytical dimensions, broadens the scope to include ethical and ideological concerns, and provides insights that inform environmental policy and advocacy by revealing how language influences public perception and action. How does ecocriticism benefit discourse analysis? Incorporating ecocriticism into discourse analysis enables a deeper understanding of how environmental narratives influence our perceptions and interactions with nature. It reveals the influence of language on ecological understanding and offers insights to promote more informed and sustainable discourse.